Okay, let's dive in. It's quite a picture, isn't it? You've got one person with, well, immense control over key modern technologies, space, internet, EVs.
Right, like holding the keys to critical infrastructure.
And then you have another figure who, held the highest office and still wields enormous influence, even without a formal title right now.
So what happens when these two forces clash? Not just a disagreement, but a really public, seemingly very angry feud.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're digging into here. We've gone through quite a bit of material, articles, analyses, reports, and they all point to something much bigger than just, say, a social media spat.
Definitely. The sources we looked at frame it as a political vendetta, almost a corporate takedown attempt. Some even suggest it could be seen as a kind of economic hostage situation.
We are talking, of course, about Elon Musk versus Donald Trump. And the picture painted by the sources, it's serious. The implications run deep, touching things we all, depend on.
So our goal here is to unpack how this whole thing apparently started, according to our sources, and why it's such a significant situation.
Okay, so where do the sources say this conflict, this current flare-up, really began?
Well, the consensus seems to point to a specific moment back in June 2025. That's when Donald Trump announced what he termed his one big, beautiful bill.
Ah, yes, that bill. And what was in it that specifically triggered this whole chain reaction?
From the analysis, it was a pretty sweeping tax and spend proposal. But the key part, the bit that seemed to light the fuse, were provisions targeting areas right in Musk's wheelhouse.
You mean like cuts to EV subsidies?
Exactly. Significant cuts there, reductions in climate grants, and pulling back funding for certain kinds of tech infrastructure projects, things directly impacting Tesla and potentially other ventures.
And Musk's reaction when this news broke, how did the sources describe that?
Extreme is a
Yeah.
word that comes up. He didn't just criticize it politely. The descriptions suggest he went all out, basically scorched the earth via his X account.
I remember seeing some that he called the bill economic sabotage, didn't he? And something like a step back for humanity.
hmm And then it escalated further. He posted that the president was, quote, a danger to innovation, and crucially, must be removed.
Wow. Those words just typed out on a screen. The sources really emphasize their impact, right? Calling them almost lethal, potentially.
Absolutely potent. And Trump, well, he didn't hold back either.
What was the counterattack there?
He used his platform, Truth Social, hitting back just as hard, called Musk things like a fraud, a welfare billionaire. And then came the big threat.
The threat to federal contracts.
Yes,
Yeah.
a direct threat to cut off all federal contracts with any of Musk's companies. The message, as one source put it, was basically, he wants war, let's give it to him.
And just like that,
Yeah.
you've got these two incredibly polarizing figures, as the sources describe them, locked in open warfare. What happened immediately after? The fallout was pretty quick.
Oh, immediate. The market reaction was described as instant carnage. Tesla shares took a massive hit,
How massive are we
a
talking?
14% drop in one day.
14%. That's
Yeah.
that's an astronomical amount of shareholder value just wiped out.
Yeah, it translates to something like $150 billion in market value. Just poof, gone overnight. And Musk's personal fortune took a huge hit, too.
How much did he lose personally?
The reports say around $34 billion, again, in a single day, characterized as, I think, the second biggest one-day personal wealth loss ever recorded.
Just staggering numbers. But as the sources stress, this goes way beyond just the stock market figures, right?
Exactly. That's the core concern raised in the material. It's the potential systemic damage. Take SpaceX, for instance.
Right. They have these huge multi-billion-dollar contracts with NASA, with the Pentagon, critical
So,
stuff.
and suddenly those contracts are explicitly threatened with suspension. That's a massive deal.
And then there's Starlink. It's become so important, hasn't it? In places like Ukraine, Israel, even for U.S. military comms.
Absolutely vital in some areas. And now that entire system is under intense federal scrutiny because of this feud. Plus, the EV tax credits.
Crucial for Tesla's bottom line.
Yeah, the threat to eliminate those. That alone could be over $1 billion hit to the company.
The sources also offer a glimpse, kind of behind the curtain, beyond the public posts.
Right. There are reports of Musk being furious privately. Raging is a word used. And one really alarming detail mentioned.
What was that?
A reported threat, maybe made in anger, but still, a threat to actually pause SpaceX's Dragon crew launches for NASA.
Pause the launches, with astronauts potentially up there.
Exactly. The implication being he could potentially strand American astronauts in space just to exert pressure in this feud. Whether he'd actually do it or not, the fact was even reportedly floated.
That just stops you in your tracks.
Hmm.
And what about inside his companies? How is this playing out internally, based on what we've read?
Well, there was an anonymous quote from an executive suggesting they felt like they were watching a man unravel. It paints a picture of this escalating way beyond policy disagreement into something very personal, very volatile.
The term mutually assured destruction gets used in the analysis to describe this whole situation. Can you break that down in this context?
Sure. It's basically saying both sides have the power to inflict enormous damage on the other, and potentially on everyone else too. It's like a high-stakes game of chicken.
So if the government, maybe influenced by Trump, actually pulls those federal partnerships,
Then Musk's companies, which rely heavily on those billions in government money, face severe financial damage. Could be crippling.
but the other side of that coin, if Musk retaliates, that sounds potentially even more dangerous from a national standpoint.
That's precisely the concern highlighted. If Musk were to, say, weaponize his infrastructure, maybe degrade Starlink access for the military or allies, or halt those crucial government launches with SpaceX,
Or even if just a destabilized Tesla throws the whole clean energy market into chaos.
then the country itself suffers major disruption because, like you said, the White House needs SpaceX for national security launches.
The military uses Starlink for battlefield comms.
And Tesla is seen as a key player, a cornerstone even, in the national shift towards cleaner energy. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they're deeply integrated now.
It really is like that analogy used in one source.
Yeah.
Two kings holding each other's castles hostage.
And maybe the most worrying part, as highlighted in the material, is that there doesn't seem to be an easy off-ramp. No clear referee, no simple legal fix, no single person who can just step in and say, stop.
It's a situation where essential national functions could genuinely be held hostage by a personal dispute between two very, very powerful men.
Which really leads to the bigger questions raised in the analysis we reviewed. How did we arrive here? How did one individual end up controlling so much critical national infrastructure, rockets, AI, cars, global comms networks?
And have the power to potentially disrupt it all based on a personal feud.
And on the flip side, how does another individual, currently at a formal political office, still possess such immense informal power that just his words can cause market panic and put national contracts in jeopardy?
The analysis suggests this isn't just, standard capitalism or politics as usual.
No, it's described as something different, perhaps a new breed of empire, where power isn't just political or economic in the old sense, but tied directly to controlling these vast technological systems.
And the critical question the sources pose is, what happens when that kind of empire gets tangled up in personal vendettas?
Right, when the very infrastructure you might use every day for the internet, for transport, for national security, becomes a bargaining chip in a fight between powerful figures.
This isn't just some celebrity drama playing out. The argument made is that we're seeing deep national vulnerabilities being exposed right now.
Yeah, as one source put it quite bluntly, billionaires play chess, the economy flinches. And apparently, behind the scenes, government officials are scrambling.
Looking for backups, maybe? For things like satellite services?
That's what's reported, trying to figure out contingency plans. Meanwhile, investors are just desperate for some kind of stability, some clarity.
And think about the employees at these companies. Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink. The sources mentioned maybe are living in fear, basically.
Worried their jobs could just evaporate because of a conflict they have absolutely nothing to do with.
Yeah.
Caught completely in the crossfire.
So what really comes through from all this material is a perspective that the systems we rely on, especially in tech and infrastructure, they don't be built on foundations that are more fragile than we think.
Yeah, built on what one analysis called fragile contracts, ego-driven tech, and political vengeance.
And maybe, according to this view, we're just seeing the potential consequences of that fragility play out right now.
So let's try to wrap this up, pull together the key takeaways from this deep dive based on the sources.
Okay, first, this conflict between Musk and Trump really serves as a stark, very immediate illustration of how intertwined personal power, private companies, and critical national infrastructure have become.
Absolutely. And beyond the headline-grabbing market crash, the real story highlighted is the profound systemic risk. We're talking risks to essential services, national security launches, military communications, even the foundations of the clean energy transition.
Hmm. And the way this whole conflict is being characterized isn't just as a business dispute or a political spat.
No, it's being presented as potentially demonstrating this new breed of empire where infrastructure vital to an entire nation can effectively become a pawn in personal battles.
Which leaves us, and leaves you listening, with a pretty significant question to ponder, drawn directly from the heart of this analysis.